True Detective is not only a masterclass in creating a procedural show, but is also one in crafting characters. Although the murder and subsequent hunt for the killer is the story engine which drives the series, we stay hooked because of the characters of Rust and Marty and their developing relationship. Within the beginning scenes are lessons that all aspiring screenwriters and storytellers could do with learning. Your characters have to grow through exposure to adversity and conflict, which comes through them meeting a mirror image of themselves, forcing them to scrutinise who it is they really think they are. In the opening episode, we are introduced to Rust and Marty as the polar opposites of one another in every possible sense. In this, writer Nick Pizziolato makes a promise to us as the audience that these two characters will clash and create conflict, which will drive the show forward. The opening 10 and a bit minutes are him pulling back on the elastic of a slingshot loaded with a heavy stone. At some point, he will let it go and allow the projectile to be flung at its target, creating the chaos that we have been dying to see since we were first introduced to Marty and Rust. However, out of the destruction will arise two new individuals who are now better versions of themselves, change which we love to see our characters go through on our screens. Welcome to 10 Minute Textualism. As ever, be warned, there will be spoilers. Rust is portrayed as an outsider, a savant who does not belong in the world that he inhabits. He frequently makes reference to his distaste for Louisiana and chides the people who live in the state as backward, theistic Luddites. He is a strange contradiction. Spiritual but rejects spiritualism, empathetic but lacks empathy, silently strong but also quietly fragile. Those back at the station have a nickname for him, the Taxman. This is because of the large ledger he carts around with him on a case. Rust doesn't care though. There is no concern for appearances with him. What you see is what you get, and that is a nihilist whose only concern is his work because he has nothing else, shown to us when we are allowed a fleeting glimpse of his bare apartment. Marty, on the other hand, is a native to the area and grounds himself within the location of Louisiana, frequently defending it against the remarks his partner makes about it. He is far more conservative than Rust, and makes it known that he is the people person of the pairing. However, he too is full of contradictions, which will be made much clearer as the series progresses. Currently though, he is all ego, everything as a facade which he represents to the world. Unlike Rust, he is all surface. Everything matters to Marty, except it seems, the things that actually matter. These two could not be any more different if they tried to be, almost the antithesis of one another. As Marty states, you don't get to pick your parents, and you don't get to pick your partner. At the crime scene, their differences are reinforced. Marty is concerned with the physical acts of the crime that took place, merely the details that he can see on the surface. Whereas Rust wishes to examine the motives and psychology of the killer. This is heightened by the way that the pair document the crime scene. Marty haphazardly takes pictures at eye level, almost bored of the routine that he carries out at each incident he arrives at, gathering only fractured evidence. Whereas Rust kneels next to the body of the young woman and draws it in great detail, examining each part of the crime scene to create a larger picture than Marty is able to see. There is also other, more subtle differences that the two exhibit. Marty chews tobacco, Rust smokes cigarettes. Marty insists that they can discover what has occurred through procedural channels, whereas Rust believes that they need to find the answer in book learning, an alien concept to Marty. The interview footage showcases some of the animosity that the two seem to have for one another, which bubbles under the surface. Marty says of Rust, he wasn't that big on talking, except when you wanted him to shut up. Whereas Rust seems not to have the highest opinion of Marty's intelligence, stating that he had to explain something to him, as if he were a child. Structurally, the opening 10 minutes also serve both men with their respective calls to adventure. These are the moments which will set them off on their journey of self-discovery so that they can grow as people, casting off their old identities and allowing a better version of themselves to develop past the ego defences that they have put in place to shield them from their neuroses. What is interesting is that their corresponding calls are moments which interrupt their assumed identities, taking them entirely outside of their comfort zones and forcing them to ask questions of themselves. Questions that they will need the other's assistance in helping them answer. Marty's comes at the station when the interviewer asks him, "What type were you?" referring to the type of police officer he sees himself as. His answer is flippant and dismissive. He is obviously uncomfortable with the question. He says he's just a regular type dude with a big ass dick. He is entirely uncertain who he is, still lost in the juvenile idea of what a cop should be, and slips further behind his facade to avoid answering. Through the narrative, we discover that during the investigation he was engaging in an extramarital affair, rejecting the transition that he should have been making to a faithful husband and attentive father. Being paired with Rust will be his experience in an adventure world, bringing him face to face with a figure who is far more certain of who he is and refuses to concern himself what others think of him. Throughout the series, Rust will challenge Marty to grow as a person by invading his home life, challenging him to accept that his family is the actual site of his power, one that he is in the process of taking for granted through his selfish and secretive actions. Rust's own call to adventure comes when he is invited to dinner by Marty. He must confront the death of his daughter and the life that he could have had as a happy family man. Initially, he is a reluctant hero, resisting the growth that has been offered to him by arriving at the meal drunk, and seemingly thankful when he is given the opportunity to leave as quickly as possible. However, he stays the course and begins to try and navigate his way through the uncertainties of family life, beginning the long road of pulling himself out of his self-enforced hermit-like lifestyle, where cynicism and violence punctuate every aspect of his existence. The mirroring of the pair allows for them to see the best and worst in themselves and each other. Marty shows Rust that there is comfort that can be derived through friendship and connection within a community, whereas Rust allows Marty to understand that there are greater things to life than the ego-driven wants that he strives for. In the ending scene outside the hospital, with the mirroring process complete, the two seem to almost switch places with one another. It is telling that Marty is now able to intently listen to his friend who he previously wished would shut up, and Rust is able to accept the counsel he receives from Marty, a man whose intelligence in the beginning he did not value highly. To really show the extent of their transformation, Marty becomes a nihilist of sorts, and Rust is now able to be far more optimistic about life, as they discuss one of the key themes within True Detective: the battle between light and dark. It is also worth noting that when Marty asks Rust if he wants to go back to the hospital to get anything, Rust replies, "Anything I left back there, I don't need." His arm around Marty, both in support and as an embrace. So, what do you guys think? Is mirroring important for our characters to develop in a text? And are there any other examples you can think of where this is the case? Leave your comments below, and don't forget that you can like and subscribe so you never miss out on any future Sight Unsound videos.